Hey, welcome everyone to the ArchiCAD user monthly webinar for September 2023. My name is Eric Bobrow and I'm here to help you today with any ArchiCAD question that you have. So this is an open coaching clinic, similar to what I do for members of my ArchiCAD coaching program. I'm open to taking in questions. I will check to see if any have come in via email. But last time I looked, that hadn't happened because I just sent out the notice last night that I was going to do this coaching clinic. So the floor is open. First of all, hello. Let me know that you're here, that you can hear me and see the screen and where you're calling in from. And then if you do have a question, let me know and I can open up your line and we can talk and perhaps take a look at it. So hey, Ian from Scotland and Rich Matthews, old friend from down under in Australia, Tom from Vancouver, Oren from Connecticut. All right, so I think we got close to 40 people on right now. Usually we get somewhere like 75 or as many as 100 or so. So anyway, hello to Richard from, well, I'm not sure where you are from. Liana from Alberta, Sharaf also from Canada. David, old friend from Santa Monica. Okay, Richard is from Ottawa, so we have several Canadians here. Yeah, so anyway, let me just close my door because I hear there's some construction or something going on outside. Hopefully that'll make it a little bit quieter. So let me know what questions I can help you with. I'm looking forward to ArchiCAD 27 coming out. I have not had a chance to play with it yet. When I talked to Graphisoft in June at the AIA trade show, they said it would be released at the end of September. So I haven't heard anything different, but I don't know if any of you have heard anything specific. So I would expect it coming soon. Big new feature from what I heard, and I guess what they posted on their website was the idea of, or the tools to be able to do different design options very gracefully, with dedicated functionality for picking, different areas. Maybe you have 3 different versions of the kitchen and you also have 2 different versions of the back area of the house, and so you can mix and match and say, what if we had version A of the kitchen and version 2 of the back of the house? These are the sort of things that can be done in current versions of ArchiCAD, but require a lot of workarounds with layer management or renovation filters or some combination. And from what I gather, they've got a pretty good solution in terms of the tools. Other than that, I haven't seen too much detail about other features, but I'm sure there'll be some things to discover. And so next month, perhaps that'll be part of my presentation. I'm sure there'll be a lot of things from Graphisoft that'll talk about the new version, but I always like doing a roundup and just talking about some of the questions that come up, things maybe that they didn't put in that you need to figure out ways to do, or things that have changed. Anyway, I'm looking for comments and questions. Andy Travers, nice to see you. Yes, thank you. I'm feeling healthy. As many of you know, I had a heart attack 2 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long. I'm 69 now, so it was when I was 67. And I've lost a bit of weight, almost 20 pounds, and pretty much maintained it. Do a lot more walking and definitely better diet. Overall, I'm feeling good. Anyway, let me know. I'm here, ready to chat. And of course, if there aren't any questions, then I might have to just come up with a few of the things that we've dealt with in some of the coaching calls. I didn't get a chance to think it through in terms of presenting things, but there's always some stuff that people ask me about and that when we work through it, you know, there's interesting options that we figure out together. So let me know. I see we're got a few more people on the line. Anything that I can help you with? I'm going to check my email and just see if anything came in via email here into my support desk. Here, okay, there was one from Dennis DeMira here, and this is an interesting question. I don't know if he's on the line. No, he's not, but I could certainly take a look at this. So in this case, he's talking about whether there's a way to use auto text to add in a custom label that will identify the elevation of a core component, like to the subfloor of a floor assembly. So be happy to, let's say, take a look at that and just talk a little bit about auto text and the surprising capabilities that it has, as well as some of the limitations that, you know, may make the, I'm not sure whether it'll do this. So I'll wait to see, or I'll see if anyone else posts something in here, but I'll go on. I see Tom Palmer. Okay, Tom, you have a question. What's the best way to model sloping concrete slabs that are flat on the bottom and sloped on the top? Okay, let me actually take your question right now, and I'll open up your line so we can have a chat. So Tom here. So Tom, your line is open.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey. Yep. Where are you located, Tom?
In Vancouver, Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I lived in Toronto for 18 years, so I know Canada somewhat.
Oh, great.
Not like a native Canadian, but I lived there for a long time, and I did travel across the country. So in terms of sloping concrete slabs, so probably doesn't matter the context, but I am interested in just hearing, are you talking about slabs on grade that are sloped to make rain and things go away from the building?
Both that and typical parquet slabs sometimes. So, I mean, we have a workaround, but like if you're just sloping in one direction, you can use a roof, obviously, right? And just change the material to whatever you need. But often we have, in a typical parquet, you'll have you know, spot elevations that are higher on the edges, and to make everything kind of drain to the center. But on the underside, it's typically flat in many cases. So, I mean, I have used meshes in the past, but it's pretty finicky. What you do is, you know, you set your points and then you give a mesh thickness, and then you copy it and you drop a copy however far it has to go, and then you trim the bottom. And sometimes that works, but if you lose any of that, it disappears. Like if you lose your second copy, or it can be confusing. So just looking for something where you could take basically a concrete floor and add a topping. But I know it's not available right now, but as a standalone tool anyway.
Well, I guess when I think about that context, flat bottom, different point elevations on the top, the mesh tool actually is ideal because it does have a flat bottom, and obviously part of the functionality of the mesh is that you can say this point here is at a certain height and this point is at another height, etc., and it will just figure out the top surface. So it is a natural thing. One of the limitations is that, you know, you can't really see the slope. You know, you can cut a section in any place and sort of measure the slope. You can calculate, you can figure out what it should be, but there is no way of specifying, hey, I want, you know, 1/4 inch to a foot, or, you know, whatever your grade has to be. So one possibility that comes to mind would be that you have a flat slab for the basic, you know, just covering the unfinished ground with the slab, you know, which could be, you know, sand and gravel and concrete, and then you use one or more roof pieces that have similar top material, concrete or asphalt, or et cetera, and you use a merge option in solid element operations. That way, with the roof elements, you can specify a slope, and you can even project where the roof elements would meet each other, so you have seams or, what would be the analog of roof ridges, and hips and valleys and things like that. And so that would allow you to have the top relatively easy to control, but it looks like it's all one thing when you cut a section or in any 3D view. So I can demonstrate that. Would that be of interest?
Sure, that'd be fine. Yeah, and I guess the other one is the more difficult one, the one with that it's sloped, but the thickness is equal. But go ahead with this one first.
Talking about where it's sloped, but the thickness is
So
equal.
not flat on the bottom. Sorry, that the top slope matches the bottom slope. Sorry, that's the other condition, I guess.
Well, then obviously you could, in theory, do anything like that with roofs. And if the control points become awkward because, it's really not a roof system, it's just sort of arbitrary points to meet your geometry, then you could use the mesh to roof tool to create a series of roofs from the grade points that you've got. And so then they do have uniform, thickness because they are all roofs. So that would be another demonstration. I can certainly do that. Have you used the mesh to roof tool?
Not lately.
Okay.
So I may
I
have.
haven't lately either, but I have over the years, and it's pretty straightforward. So I can demonstrate that. Rather than do it in the context of this sample project, let me just open up a new one here. So we'll just say are here, launch a new instance. So you said, was it parkade, did you say?
Yeah, that's an often either that or just a sloping roof.
When you say parkade, are you talking about a parking lot?
Oh yeah, parking lot, underground parking lot. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Sorry for my Canadianness.
It just at first I thought you were talking about a parquet floor. No, that's not quite right.
Okay.
All right, so let's just take a look at a couple of contexts here. So obviously, if you have the slab tool, I'll just draw this flat top and bottom, whatever thickness you want, one component or multiple skins representing, framing and cladding and things like that. We have the roof tool, which has, let's see if we do the roof tool with just a single slope here. You have a slope, or you'd say a horizontal, an area that or a direction that it rises, and then some sort of shape, and this will have a slope. And then we have the mesh tool here, which will have some arbitrary boundary, any shape you want, and starts out flat, but can be graded. So I'm just going to start very quickly, within a minute or two, just show those differences in geometry, since sometimes we have real new users who don't quite know how all these tools work. So if I look in 3D here, we'll see, all three of them start out as somewhat flat, although this roof here has a slope. Right now it's 0 and 12. If I say 1 and 12, here you can see, well, that's 1 foot and 12 inches, so that's 45 degrees. And if I say 1 inch and 12, that's shallower. And if I say a quarter inch in 12, then that's going to be something in terms of degrees of 1.19 degrees. So you can also specify that it's going to be 1 degree, and that'll be, whatever that needs to be. Now, with the mesh, if I select this mesh, I can go take individual points and raise them up, raise up another point irregularly or potentially to the same height as this one. Now this would be similar to a roof in terms of one uniform shape here, although actually not quite, because it's flat up here and it's flat down here, but this part is continuing around. So it's going to be a little bit warped doing that. In any event, this also has a flat bottom here, and there's no way to move the bottom points up or down. Now, let me just show the mesh to roof if I can get that to work here. So when we have a shape like this, which is certainly warped, it's not and let me just maybe take this down a little bit. So this is actually following a curvature. You can see what happens when I rotate on there. Right now we're seeing it smoothed out there. If I say that I'd like to make it in 3D, show the all ridges sharp, you can see now that it's actually, in theory, the geometry is a series of triangulations, and it will render it as a smoothed over thing, but it does have triangulations. Now, if we wanted this, if these were control points that we really wanted for drainage, and we wanted it to be a uniform thickness, then one possibility would be to take this mesh and drag a copy of it. So I just do drag, press the Option or Control key to say I'd like to make a copy and take this down. Let's just say that I take it down a foot here. And now there are two of them. It's a little hard to tell, but there's a second one here. And what I could do is make this one out of a different material. For example, I could say I'd like it to be air, but a very strong version of air that is, let's see this one here, make it a strong version of air. This is a building material designed to cut other elements. So when I do that, you can see down here, it now looks empty there. It hasn't removed the bottom of the other piece, but if I go and use the solid element operations here and make this upper one the target and the lower one the operator and do a subtraction, then we're going to see that we have a void underneath, and this is uniform thickness for that. So it could be any arbitrary shape of mesh, but it certainly, is a very simple way. Just drag a copy of it. Now, the issue is that the copy is not linked to the original. So if you modify the geometry of the upper one, the lower one won't be smart. You'll actually literally have to delete the lower one, select the main one again, and copy it. So it's not updating, but it's very quick to do. So that's one way to do this. And you mentioned that you've done solid element operations, but you just have to be careful that you don't lose track of updates.
Yeah, because it could have hundreds of points on it, and yeah.
So let me just drag another one copy of this across here. So this is now a copy of the original one. Obviously, no subtraction when I dragged it over. Let's look at the mesh to roof tool, and I don't know if I have it loaded right now or whether it is automatically loaded.
Is that a goodies now, or does it come standard?
Mesh to roof is considered a goodie. So a goodie is an add-on tool in the ArchiCAD environment that Graphisoft provides. It's been, goodies in general have been around for 15 years, at least since ArchiCAD 7 or 8 or something like that. They extend the functionality of ArchiCAD, but generally Graphisoft says they're limited functionality. We haven't put it into the main program, partly because we don't want to put in the effort to make them perfect, but if you find them useful, go ahead and use them. So they're, they say they're goodies, they're optional. So it used to be that you had to download the goodies one at a time. There are about a dozen of them, give or take, to install them. One of the ones that was my favorite is called the Poly Count. It counts up the polygons on individual elements or the whole model, which can help you to optimize for complexity, make sure that certain things are not really using too many polygons and slowing you down. Now, most recently, the goodies are installed as a whole. You just do one download and it installs all of them. Now, I can't remember if I've installed it here, but we'll see if I go to the design menu. We go to, let's see, roof extras. I think it's actually, it would be design extras, except, no, okay, create roofs from mesh. All right, so it is in my environment, this command called create roofs from mesh. I didn't happen to select this first, so if I select it and then go to the design extras, it still doesn't show it there. I might have to do it from the floor plan. So if I then go over here, select this mesh, go design extras, here this command is available. I can say do that. You'll notice that we saw something appear here. And if I go to 3D, we'll see now there are some, it looks different than it did. And if I were to take the mesh, actually, if I take this mesh here and delete it, you can see that it has created the roof pieces that have the exact same geometry. It looks like it's creating one at the bottom as well. I don't recall it doing that in the past, but maybe that's just part of the functionality that they've put in. Obviously, I get rid of that, and then we have now something that has a uniform thickness. Now, is it any better than, what do you call it, doing the solid element operation where we're taking the mesh down? I don't know. I'm sure there are pros and cons. One is you can cut walls by roofs semi-automatically. So, you may have something like this define the top of a building, and, create some roofs, maybe even with cladding, or you could do some things with framing inside the roof structure. You can have multiple components, like a roof can have, cladding and framing and drywall underneath, or wood for a cathedral ceiling or something like that. So when you convert the mesh to roofs, you then have the option of having multiple skins relatively easily. So those would be some of the advantages. The disadvantage is, of course, that these are all individual pieces. You have to keep track of them. And if the shape, the geometry changes, it's probably better to just toss them away and, and just do it again. But that is an option that you may find useful. So I do see a couple of comments from David Yaguchi. To create a concrete slab that has even thickness on different slopes, I use a mesh to create the top slopes and copy this mesh and drop it and execute an SEO. Yeah, it's exactly what I did. And he says you place the copied mesh on an unseen layer. So yeah, the extra piece that is the tool for cutting, put it on a layer that you hide, but of course, don't delete it, because solid element operations depend upon having the operator still in the model. And David asks, and let me open up David's line, old friend here from LA, where I was based for many years. David, your line is open. Would changing the target mesh to a morph make the SEO more permanent? A mesh and a morph both would function the same way in terms of solid element operations. If it's in the model, it is something that you can see and you can use as an operator to trim things. If you delete it from the model, it's gone. So in that sense, a morph is no different. Now, a morph, you can do other things. I could actually take these 3 roofs and now convert them to a morph. Now, I don't know what benefit you'd get from it, but let's just see what that is. If I go to the design menu, convert selection to morph, it says it'll delete the original elements, but it'll turn everything into a morph. It looks much the same, but now this is a morph. Now, if I select all 3 of these, I can, as a morph, go to the design menu and say that I'd like to modify them and do a union. Now, the advantage there is that then this is a single element, much like it started out with. But of course, it is, it does have a little hard to tell there, but it is uniform thickness there. So, you know, there are some things you can do very quickly in terms of manipulation. It just would depend on what you want to end up with. One of the things about roofs is, as you know, I was mentioning, is you can specify a slope. So if we wanted to do the inverse, which would be to say, hey, I want to do some complex shapes with and know what the slope is, you could do, you know, the drainage slope for multiple places and then just tell it, hey, find the intersection, find where these are going to meet and where it's going to, you know, have the low point, etc. So I can demonstrate that. It'd be the inverse, essentially, of creating roofs going up from the side of the building and finding their ridge line and hip and valley lines. So I've been talking a bit here, Tom. Any comments or questions from what I've said?
No, those are all good tricks. Do you know, is there a label tool? Did this come up earlier that will now tell you the slope, and no matter which tool you're using, even a roof slope? Like you can tag it and it'll show.
I don't know of a label tool that'll do that. That's an interesting thing. I do know, let's see, just trying to think.
And then there's different, because there's also, you know, slope, you know, sometimes we talk degrees, sometimes we talk, you know, inches in a foot or percent. So there's like three different kind of ways to label them too, right? Or to talk about slopes. Yeah.
Here is a section right now, and I've just moved it to be in line with this roof. The roof I said is, you know, 1 degree was the last thing I had done. So if I say I want to open this section here, this is the slope. This is the roof that I'm cutting through here. What is that slope? So obviously if I select the roof, we can see 1 degree slope. If I want to annotate that 1 degree slope, then I could go, let's say, take the, let's see, it would be the angle dimension tool. And let's see, I'm not quite sure what would be the most efficient way to do it. But if I were to say, take, when you do that, you say click first edge or draw the first vector of an angle dimension. I could say from this point going along this, actually, let's say go along this edge. That's interesting. It's not picking up, should pick up that as a.
I think it doesn't work in the section. You have to actually draw something to pick it up. It's one of those annoying things.
All right. Well,
Like if you draw 2 lines, it'll start to pick it up. Yeah.
It says I'm snapping to that point. I'm going to this edge, but that edge, you can see there is a square. It's not going to change if the roof slope changes. But I can say that's one vector. The other one is the same point, but going across horizontally. Now, how do I get a horizontal line? If I hover over this, no, it's not giving me that. So I guess what you're saying is that you need to draw the straight line like that. And then you can say that you want to do the angle from this straight line here to this vector that's going across here. And then I guess if we put it here, 179 degrees. And I'm trying to remember how you get this to reverse. I think you can flip it around. That's 181. So the sequence that I did probably, what would you get it to be the 1 degree? Because it is locked to the correct 2 things, but it's not, yeah, it's flipping there. Can we go in here? And in any event, that's one thing. It's usually not going to be, well, it only will do a decimal degree. Even if we do get it to be 1 degree, it's not going to say 1 inch in 12 or 1/4 inch in 12 or a certain percentage. It will not do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know of any annotation tool that would do it. It would be something that could be programmed in GDL. So I have a background in programming, so I could actually even consider doing this as a little experiment. Basically in GDL, one can program in, let's say, some geometry. Maybe you have something that in the simple case might be just like a stick or a pipe that indicates, that you'd see in 3D that would show a slope, and maybe a reference to the horizontal or something like that. And it could then have on the plan an annotation that would be, what is the slope that it's calculating. And if it was done right, you could literally stretch that slope thing to snap to a roof or snap to pavement in a section. You can, adjust it on the fly to meet geometry. It would not be associated with the element because it would be an independent object, but it could have annotation that was smart and meet, various standards of how you want to draw, how you want to reference it, whether it's percent, degrees, or rise over run. So that could be done, but it wouldn't be associative if you were to change the slope.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
All right. So yeah, I think now if we have a slope, let's just see if I do have. Okay, let me just go to the first floor here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about smart labels. And this actually relates to the question that was sent in by, I think Dennis Muir was his name. If I go to the label tool, we can draw labels that are independent. I can just say, oh, pointing towards here, I want to say something like, this is a mesh, so I can put in something and I can point in a general direction. I can also, if the label tool is set up to attempt to associate, I can hover over something and then click on either an edge or a corner, usually, either one. And then when I do this, and I'll just zoom in, well, actually, it's not letting me. Let me zoom in while I'm in this. This text here can have information about the element that it's being pointed to, whereas the independent one won't do that. What sort of information could it be? Well, if we look at this being a roof, and it knows that it's associated with a roof, that's why it's not showing walls or other things, it's just showing roof, and it says, well, I could show pitch. All right, so that would be the closest. I mean, that would be what we want. Pitch versus, instead of saying slope, it's the pitch. All right, so I'll just say double click on that pitch. It says 1 degree. Okay, so there is something that can be associated with a roof. A roof has a constant pitch, at least a single plane roof does. Obviously, a multi-plane may have different pitches. So this is doing that. Now, can we change it from degrees to rise over run or percentage or things like that? I'm not sure, because this, when I went here to, actually if I have it selected and go click in here, it says, oh, that's the roof pitch, but there's no setting that says, how do you want it formatted, right? Now, if I go into the options, project preferences, calculation units, or dimensions, we may find that there's some ways that we can deal with this. If I go to calculation units, is there an angle? It says decimal degrees down to 2 decimal places. Now, if I just make it 4, I just want to see if all of a sudden, yeah, so it is paying attention to that calculation rule, which would also be used in schedules. Now, obviously, I'm sorry, calculation units. Now, what else could we do? We could do degrees, minutes, seconds, not really relevant here. You know, this is more for survey sort of things. And gradients and radians, I've never used those. I mean, I remember learning some things in calculus or trigonometry, but I don't know when you would find that useful. So the angle unit doesn't have, hey, I want to do it as percentage or something. So it's really designed for 2D drawings and not for, you know, construction, rise over run or whatever. Like this one decimal place, you can see how it changes. Now there is an object that I recall is something here. If I type in slope, here's a slope symbol. Okay, so this symbol is an independent object that you can then say, I would like to, how do you want to display this? You can say what pen it is. So this is pen 46. It's, you know, sort of a greenish, generally color, and what size. That doesn't say how it's representing it. Type style 2. Let's just see what these other ones are. Style 1. Doesn't see style 3. So I'm not seeing the differences between these in the preview here. Let's put it back to the default and say okay. And how do we get the slope here? This is whether it's rotated on the plan. If I were to say 45, it's going to just rotate, you know, this to some thing on the plan. But how does it pick up the slope here? Oh, here's a text. Okay, it's literally, we'll put whatever text you want with a line, with an arrow. I guess that's all it is. So if I click here, you can see it has an arrow. And if we would just change this to, we have the size of the arrowhead, font size, doesn't actually, oh, arrowhead width and height. You know, so if I say width, make it much bigger, let's say 3 inches and 2 inches. Okay, so now it's going to be much bigger there. And we did have some choices of styles. You know, style 1, you can see that's a different style of arrowhead than what I had a second ago. So you have some different things, but this is obviously, you just tell it what you want it to say. And it's a quick little graphic that you can drag copies of around, but it won't, it's not intelligent. So that's a limitation there. Okay, so Morgan Boys, hi Morgan. Let me see if I can open up your line as a point here. So you're under C Morgan Boys. Okay, open. You said that ContraBIM has several videos on how to label slopes on.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me briefly what they're doing? Are they measuring it in a section and then typing in things, or how are they doing it?
I didn't quite follow the one that involved the meshes, but he does also do another, he has like 3 videos, and I think they're all free on YouTube regarding like a lot of these problems. Right. And like labeling slope on a roof and then being able to, using expressions, convert it to, you know, whatever format you really need.
It's everything.
Okay, so let me just
thing you wish for. Your site traffic is skyrocketing until the.
All right, so ContraBIM, I know John Hallgarth reasonably well. We've worked cooperatively on some projects in the past. He's now off and running with doing a lot of teaching of ArchiCAD, has a new course on ArchiCAD that looks fairly comprehensive. So he's got some great videos. He's accumulated a bunch of subscribers here, and a lot of likes. So he's doing some good work here. So he does have some good answers there. So obviously he's done some development work here to create things. I guess you said that he talks about how to create roof pitch custom with expressions.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if he's providing the library part or he's just showing how you could build your own.
Yeah, he does do a lot of, you know, yeah, I have this great template, but here's how you do it yourself.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah, so obviously he's both playing the game like I do, teaching things, and then saying if you want an easier way to do it and you don't want to figure it out or just try to, you know, DIY, then buy my template or get my course. And I respect that. Yeah, so it's good stuff. Thank you for pointing this out. So if you guys all want to check this out or check out his work, ContraBIM, if you were in YouTube and you just search for ContraBIM, you'd find his channel. We go to his channel.
Hello
here.
and welcome.
There's John. You wanted to find this particular one and you didn't have the link. If you could just remember ContraBIM, you do a search with this one here, and you might type in slope, and then we'll see here's a few things that he's done on that. So good stuff. He's doing some great work. Thanks for sharing that, Morgan.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so it is a label for meshes. So it's interesting. I don't know whether it's going to be associative. My guess is that I can't envision how it would be associative, but I can imagine how you could have an annotation element that was an object that basically you tell it, snap to this point, snap to that point, and then it calculates stuff based on the distances and elevations, and then displays on the plan an annotation. So it wouldn't be linked if the mesh changed shape, but it would be accurate and you wouldn't have to calculate it. I can see that being done, but I don't think you could go beyond that. So we're getting some background noise. From Morgan. I'm going to mute your line. Do you have anything else to say, Morgan?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I've been answering some questions and comments from Tom and David. Anything else on your side from, I was going to show you one other thing, which was the union or the merging of stuff. So if you wanted to have a flat bottom, like you're laying concrete on top of sand and gravel and stuff like that, but a sloped top, you certainly can do the what do you call it, the mesh, because you can just raise points up. But if you did want to have control the top slope for drainage, you could use a union approach, which I will show you here. So what I've got right now is I have the flat slab here. Well, actually, let's see. Yeah, so in this case, I'm just saying, can we have a slope top and flat bottom without using the mesh tool? And one approach would be, let me just take this roof. I'll just drag a copy of it over here. It's not the same size as the other one, but it'll do here. Let me make it a little bit more dramatic slope so it's not, so this one here is this roof here. Instead of 1 degree, we'll just say 3 degrees. So it's going to have a little bit more dramatic slope. And let me just look at this in 3D. All right, so right now we can see the roof and the slab stacked on top of each other. Let's just take this slab up in terms of thickness. So I'll, let's see. I take, right now the slab is got a composite here, so it has a fixed thing. Let me just change this to something generic like concrete here. So actually, I have to change it to a uniform single element one. Then it just happens to be concrete. Now I can take the top up on the fly. Let me just take it up to this point here. All right, so now we have a flat bottom, and we have this thing stacked. And let me just take this shape just so we can reveal things. Let me just back it in here. All right. So now, how would we get this to have the flat or the slope top and the flat bottom? Well, if I use solid element operations, so I'm going to go to the design menu, solid element operations. Actually, I have it open here, just realized. And I say that this slab is the target, and this slope roof is the operator. And instead of subtraction, I'm going to do addition. Now, this is something we don't do nearly as often as subtraction. I'll just say execute. All right. Now, there's a subtle change visually. This slab now thinks of itself as having this sloped top. If I go the roof element, actually the roof element is still there, but it's a little hard to select. If I hover over this, you can see there's two elements, and if I tab, that's the roof. And perhaps one thing I can do is hide this roof just so we can look at the end result. So what am I doing here? I want to go to the window palettes, quick layers. Here, quick layers allows me to say hide the layer that this selection is on. And then I can also undo. You can see the difference between this, but if I redo it. So now what do we have here? This is the slab here, and it's been joined. Now, of course, the roof, the roof in this case, I had some multiple skins, so it is a little bit confusing. Let me turn back on that layer of the roof here and select the roof again by, let's see, tabbing through, there's the roof. And let's just make this, we're gonna go to, make it a generic one, and we'll also make this the concrete here. And I'll just do O3 concrete here. And what was this slab? O3 concrete, good, okay. Oh, concrete structural, let's see, this one, we'll make it concrete structure. Okay, so it is the same. Now, if I turn the layer off, you can see that this is, we're not seeing any break in here. Because I didn't change the roof appearance, we're still seeing a difference there. Looks like roof tile. Let me go and select that roof here, and let's just say that we're going to, oh, didn't change to the concrete, did it? Concrete structural, there it is. And we're going to say by building materials. Okay, so now if I hide that roof, we can see that this looks uniform. It is, and if we were to cut a section through it, or move the section line over here, we're going to see that this is the slab, which has a slope top, and actually it has, it's interesting. It's, we're not seeing the line across there. Let's see, if I hide the roof there. Okay, not quite sure what's going on here visually. What my idea is, and certainly we could test it if we wanted to go further, is you would just have the slab be add to the slab with the roof. So that would be an option if you wanted to have something with a controlled, an easy to control top slope. And with a flat bottom, so that you can control drainage, but it is not it's not a mesh instead. All right, so let's see if that was at all interesting. It was a little bit of a messy demonstration, but perhaps it has some relevance. So David or Tom, just any comments before we move on?
Yeah, no, the merging and all a solid element operations obviously pretty powerful, and you can do all sorts of things with them. So you know, creating holes partway through the depth of a slab, for example, or a niche, or that's one example. So it's a good tool to explore if you haven't.
Okay, all right, thank you. David Yaguchi, any other comments there? Okay, so David may have stepped away. All right, so I'm open to other questions. If I don't see one right in the next couple of minutes, I'll switch over to the question that was sent in, and let me see if there are any other questions that someone has sent in here. So this is a question about automatically labeling. I'll take a look at that in a minute. And let's see, that's Dennis. And has Dennis? No, he has not shown up here. Yeah, let's see if there's any working on complex profiles. Okay, so Gary. There's Gary on the call. Do not see Gary Acton on the call. How to use the opposite modifiers and how the different arrows, what they mean, and how to change, move from both ends. See, how's my connection? Is the audio clear? I don't care if the webcam is a little jerky. Let me know. How to change from both ends opposed to move one direction, like moving a foundation wall down. Okay, I can demonstrate this. This is something I'm very familiar with for Gary, and he can watch the recording. Let me see if there's any other questions here. Auto label, no. Okay, here's coaching clinic. Okay, someone asking about how to work remotely as an ArchiCAD user. Let's see if that person is on. Welshie, don't see that person. And here's someone who's glad that I'm still alive, but does not have ArchiCAD, wants to learn it. That's a challenge, because I can't help you get ArchiCAD, but I can help you learn ArchiCAD. Okay, and they have someone looking for an ArchiCAD experience artist. If any of you, here's an interesting thing, just any of you who are on or looking for freelance work or possibly remote work, they are looking for motivated, experienced ArchiCAD artists to help our core team achieve top quality architectural 3D visualizations. So without going into all of this, what I remember is basically that want someone who can interpret drawings and create detailed ArchiCAD models for their clients. And I assume it's maybe some combination of 3D building models that are going to be built, as well as some possibility of just making nice visualizations from the 2D, for renderings. Looking for someone with 7 years experience or more, good portfolio, etc. here. So arterrainteractive.com.au. If you remember that and you're interested, you can check that out, the website. You can also drop me a line, support@bobrow.com, and I can just say, hey, I saw you mention a job opening. I don't know anything about these people, but it looks like a very thorough job requirement, so I'm sure that they're reputable and provide high quality work for their clients. So anyway, there's that. Anyway, so let me go then, let's do the auto label one here, and then look at the complex profiles, and I'm open to other questions. So Action Design Services, that you? That who we were just talking about? All right, let me just open You're under Action Design Services. Let me open up your line. So your microphone is open. All right, well, if you can figure out how to click on the microphone button and go to webinar, you will be able to talk. And hello.
Hello.
All right, so are you the Artera?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, which?
Coughlin.
I'm sorry. You're.
Files.
Oh, Acton. Oh, you're Gary. Okay. There we go. Okay. So Gary, yeah, be happy to answer your question there. And I do see Jerry Sperling. Hey, Jerry, old friend as well. How do you change the path for publishing? Okay, so we're getting a few questions here. Let me just try to take some quicker ones first, then the more complex ones. So Jerry, I can show you that. That's very quick. So I'll do that now. Gary, I'm going to push you back a little bit because I think I should be able to address Jerry's and the other question about the annotation of the top height question relatively quickly. And then the complex profiles, that could be an open-ended discussion. We could take quite a while with it. So I hope you'll be able to stay on for a little while. Gary?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I muted there just to.
Okay. All right. So let me open up then Jerry here, Jerry here. So Jerry, are you there? I mean, you are there. I unmuted you. You want to say hello?
Hello, I'm here.
Hey there. It's been quite a while.
Yes, I could talk about that, but probably not for the whole audience.
All right. Let's talk about publishing here. So
I've been forced into Revit use. That's what's been going on.
sorry to hear you're, that you've been forced or chosen to use Revit for some or much of your work. But here we are in ArchiCAD. I'm just going to switch over to my sample project because it has a bunch of things set up, including publishing. So for those of you who maybe are less familiar, the publisher part of ArchiCAD is this one here. It's the furthest one over on the right of the navigator window, and it allows you to say export your project information in a variety of formats, but one of them is for printing, or another similar one would be plotting, and then the third, also somewhat similar, would be exporting as PDF or DWG. Now, printing and plotting, you're going to say, I want to go to this printer on my network or this plotter on my network. The ones that are for PDF or DWG or for BIMX, say, save it in this location on my computer or on my network. So how do you change the location if you want to put it in a different folder or you've moved this to a different computer? How do you do that? Well, first of all, I've clicked on this publisher sets icon. I'm going to go up one level. These are the ones in this particular file. There are ones that will output layouts, so entire sheets. You can have views that might be just some elevations and sections and plans, not on sheets, that would go out to AutoCAD, DWG. But let's say that we wanted to take the layouts that are going to be put into a PDF. Where does it get stored? If we tell it to create it, where would it go? Well, it's controlled by the publishing properties of this particular one. So you can see publisher set properties. It says that it's going to have a name. Right now it is, it's going to inherit the project name, and it's going to have the name layouts to PDF. The path right here is blank because this is a sample project and I didn't specify it. If I click on browse, I can say I'd like to export or set the path somewhere on my file system. So I'll go local file system. It'll open up, a standard selection box. let me go to my downloads folder here and create a new folder. Let's say PDF from ArchiCAD. All right, so this is now a folder that is in my downloads folder under my name on my computer here. All right, so this is where I'm choosing it, and I say choose this location, and you'll see it fills in that path that we were just looking at, and that's where it will save the files. And in this case, it's going to save out a PDF with a single file that potentially will have multiple sheets in it, you know, as either the entire drawing set or specific ones that you select and tell it to do just a subset.
Yeah, totally got it. Yeah.
Okay, do you have any questions then for what I just demonstrated?
No, what I didn't know was where to go to find that window for the, you know, browsing, and so you go up to the
You go
upper
up to the
left
top
corner.
level. You go up to the top level of the publisher set. If I was back in here, double click on it, I can't control the path here.
Right.
I can say, hey, I'd like to do these 4 sheets. I could say publish the selected items, or I could say publish the entire set, but it'll go out to wherever the path is set. And again, what you need to do is go up a level. In earlier versions of ArchiCAD, there was a different mechanism. You'd press down on here and then it would show you the option to go up a level. In recent versions, you have this little button that says level up, and then you can see these different sets that
Yeah.
preset. And then
Okay.
public properties is where it is. And you can see here's the path now indicated, but of course I can change that.
Yeah, I kept looking for the publishing properties box somewhere, and I couldn't find it. So, okay, now.
I right click here, we have publishing properties as well as this button. But if you're inside this, you're not going to see publishing properties. You know, you can have rename items. I can select here and, oh, here, I guess at the top level, you can go to publishing properties.
Oh,
So that's another, you know, maybe one step shorter, just there.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, so
Thanks.
I'll move on if that's okay, Jerry.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, were you the one? I remember somebody sent me something a while ago, and I have a vague memory. It could have been you, but asking about setting the tolerance for dimensions to, you know, not going so deep like to 64th, but have it.
Oh, yes, that was me. That's still aggravating. I can't seem
I
to.
remember it, and if it's still aggravating, let me show you how that
All
works.
right then, thank you.
All right. So right now in this model here, all the dimensions are nice even numbers. I don't know if there's a ½ inch anywhere in here, but that's because the model was carefully laid out, you know, with dimensions to the nice nearest inch. But let's just say that we had a wall. I'm just going to do something totally arbitrary here. Obviously, since I didn't measure that, it's likely to be some funny fractional inch, right? So I'm going to dimension, you know, from one end to the other here. Okay, 3/4 of an inch here. Well, you know, if I were to stretch this arbitrarily, now it's 7/8. And of course, sometimes you may end up with it, you know, being really crazy, like 61/64 or something like that. Okay, so how do you determine this? And maybe you say, well, 1/8 of an inch for my drawings, that's too, you know, well, let's round it to 1/4. Or maybe it's showing 30 seconds and you want to round it to the 1/8. How do you do that? Well, first of all, if I go to the options, project preferences, dimensions, I can say that I'd like to round it to a different level. Right now it is rounding to the 1/8, okay? Let me just say that I'd like to round it to the nearest ½ inch, just arbitrarily. Now when I do that, notice that it says custom. So it's no longer associated with a preset named ArchiCAD Master Template, condoc, construction document. So that was a preset that was active. I'm saying, let's test out a custom setting, rounding to the nearest ½ inch. Say okay. And now you can see it's a 6/8. This didn't change its actual dimension. It's just rounding it to the nearest ½ inch, right? Now, if I double click, if I go back here and just double click on floor plan view here, see, it goes back to this 7/8. Why? Because this view has a setting that it brings up the dimensioning preset that we had a moment ago. So that preset was said rounded to the 1/8 inch. So it's probably not, 7/8. It's probably some odd thing, but it's being rounded to the 1/8, which at least is not too embarrassing, compared to 61/64 or something like that. Now, how would we say, hey, I want my construction documents to be rounded to the nearest 1/4 inch, or whatever you choose? Okay, here's what you do. You go to the options, project preferences, dimensions. Here, it's back here. The custom has disappeared. Let me say I want to round it to the nearest 1/4 inch. It says that's custom. After testing it and looking and saying that looks okay, before I double click on any view, I'm going to go back in here and say store as, and I'll just carefully type in the exact same name that I'm using that are in, my view settings, and say okay. It'll say it already exists. You want to overwrite it. Now, in some earlier versions of ArchiCAD, I remember it would say it exists. You can't overwrite that, and you'd have to give it a different name, and then you could rename the original one to avoid the conflict, rename the new one to put it with a correct name, and then delete the obsolete one. So you could eventually end up with the right name. But in this case, we're overwriting it. It's as long as you carefully type it in, it will allow you to do that. So I'll say overwrite. So now this condocs is 1/4 inch. I'll say okay. So now you can see it's rounded to the nearest 1/4 inch. And when I double click on first floor plan, it stays that way because it's using the revised version of condocs here. So does that make sense?
Yes, but I've done all that, and I've got my own custom. It's called, juries. Anyway, standard of rounding to the nearest 1/16 of an inch, rather than 64ths. And then when I go to the view that is published on, in the not the layout views that you have, because I see there are settings there. But when you go to the last category, which is
Publisher?
not publisher, the one just before that, layout.
Layout book, yeah.
Yeah, layout book. In the layout book, it always reverts to the 64ths of an inch.
Okay, well, let's take a look here. So obviously this is rounding, to the 1/4 inch. This is part of the first floor plan. Let's look at the layout book where I have the floor plan here. So on this floor plan, we're going to see, if I zoom in, that wall that I just drew is not there. If I select this and say I want to update it, it will bring the latest version of the design, which has that wall in it. And it is 6/8, not 6/7 and 3, whatever it was. Now, why is this working and yours not working? Well,
Yeah.
this drawing has a source view. What is the source view? Oh,
Okay.
it's a view right here. How do I know which view it is? It's the one that's highlighted. So in other words, I was in a sheet here. I right-clicked on the drawing and said open source view. When I opened the source view, it switched me over to this one. And in the view map, this is the view that's highlighted. Now, what are the settings of this view? It says use this here. So my guess is, Jerry, that you changed the settings of a dimension, preference for either you didn't save the custom settings with a name.
I did save those. Yeah.
So you say you did that, okay. And if you then saved the view as needed with it, I didn't actually have to change the view because it was still using the same condocs preference or dimension preset. But it's sometimes what I've seen is users will have a view on the layout that is showing the same model, your same project as you're working on, but it's not the same view. And if you look in the view map, you find you may have another view of the floor plan that has a different setting. So the only way to really, sort of troubleshoot that is go to the layout where it's not working, make sure it's updated and it's still not working, right click, say open source view. Then when you're in source view, look in your view map, which view is it? And then check its settings. If it's not looking correct, when you go back to say open source view, then just check what its settings are, because you may have more than one view that are of the floor plan or the elevation or whatever, and one has one setting and one has another setting.
Okay. Now, when sometimes I will take the view that I'm in, that I've constructed, and I'll right click and say, save view to layout.
Place on layout, yeah.
And it will place it on layout and change the dimensions for me. And I don't know why. I just saved that view with my dimensions, my choices for dimensions, and I go to the layout and they're 64ths of an inch.
Okay, I'd have to see the file then, because that shouldn't introduce a change there. The preferences in the layout book. So in the layout book, obviously we're dealing with a different level of organization. We're dealing with one or more drawings being placed with some annotation for the title block, etc. You can have preferences for dimensioning on the layout book, but that's only dimensioning things that you draw directly on the layout, not the drawings that you bring in. When you place drawings on the sheet, they should respect the settings. Now, there is one thing I want to double check here. So if I go to the floor plans here and I have this drawing, so I said open source view, but let's look at the drawing selection settings. Now, the drawing selection settings does allow you to do various things. Like, for example, you could say I want it to be 50% of its natural scale. So I'm going to reduce it to fit on a different piece of paper. You can also say that you're going to be using some different pens, and that's commonly done to say, you know what, in the working environment, I like having colors, but when I'm printing, I like having most everything black, or everything goes to black, things like that. So you can say which pen set you want, and you can change, are we doing black and white or based on the pen set? So these things can override the view on the layout, but there's nothing here that says change the dimension settings. There's nothing here that says change the layers.
No, I've looked for it.
They're controlled by the view. So the view creates the geometry and annotation, and of course turns on and off different layers. So hey, you don't want the ceiling dimensions to show up on the floor plan, right? And you don't want the ceiling elements to show up on the floor plan or whatever. You're turning off some layers there. But whatever layers are shown, the only modifications are what's the overall scale, what pens do you want to use? Do you want to overwrite that, or do you want to use the pens that were in the view? And you can also say to just make it black and white. So it shouldn't change the dimensions from 1/4 inch or 1/16 of an inch to 64th. So if you still have that problem, drop me another line. We can perhaps do a little consulting session, and I can see, hey, here's where your problem is. So
Okay, I'll try that. I still have a project or so in ArchiCAD, so that would be nice. Yeah.
All right. So let's see.
Thank you.
Working, yeah, you're welcome. So Gary says also look at working dimensions. Okay, so there is the concept here that if we go to the options, project preferences, this is dimensions. There's something called working units, which is similar in terms of like how is ArchiCAD showing you information, and it says, all right, we're going to round things when we're showing things in the tracker to the 64th or to the 1/4 inch or whatever. This is something you can change anytime you wish, but it does not affect the actual building elements. It does not affect dimensions. This is your units in the tracker. So when you're drawing things or you use the measure tool, it will show it rounded to whatever you choose, but it will not affect annotation. So good little note there, but it wouldn't affect Jerry's issue there.
Okay.
All right, now Tom says it needs to be saved with the view, which is what I was describing, that the view settings trump everything. In other words, you can manually change the way you look, but the view, when you double click on it, what does it look like? Okay, so Jeff says I have to leave early. Thank you very much for sharing the knowledge. I've learned so much from you through the years. Hope you have had a great trip to Ireland. I did. Thank you. And I don't know, it's 2:14. You might have headed off, Jeff. But a couple little personal things just in the middle of my abstract discussion of ArchiCAD. Our son is 33 now. Hard to believe. When I started ArchiCAD, working with ArchiCAD, he had just been born. So that's when I started working with ArchiCAD. Is that same? He was born in November '89. I started, in December '89, working with ArchiCAD. He has become a musician, and he went and got his master's degree in songwriting. He went back to college or back to university, and he decided to go to Ireland, which is one of his favorite places. And my wife has family background there, so we went in time to catch his 45-minute concert of original songs, and that was wonderful. We had spent some good quality time with him. So last month, I had to postpone or not have the ArchiCAD user thing, and I realized it at the last minute. Oh my God, I can't do this. This isn't going to work. So I apologize for anyone who was going, where is Eric? Didn't he have an event scheduled? Other personal note, just again to just share. So my wife, her sister had been ailing for 1.5 years. She passed away this week. So we're sad and relieved because she was suffering. And I'll just say to all of you, we're here on Earth, or as my business partner Richard Petrie says, for a good time, not a long time. And whether you maybe saying we're here for a good time sounds sort of superficial, but no, just take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, say that you love them, and make sure that you keep relationships as open as you can. My wife had a period when she was estranged. She and her sister were estranged, and well, they'll never get that time back, where they weren't talking to each other. We did get to see her a couple of months ago. She came out to see us for a week. She was very weak and had to use a wheelchair at the airport, but we did have some quality time. Anyway, just treasure your time with your kids, your partner, your family, and your colleagues, and just know that this is precious, and we don't have infinite number of days or nights. So, all right. Little vulnerable time there. Okay, so Gary says right-click on the view and the layout and select modify source view settings. Okay, that is another little tip here. When we select this, in addition to open the source view, we can go modify source view settings and then look here and say, are we choosing the right dimensioning or other things? So if you modify it, then when you open that source view, you'll see the updated version. So that's a good point there, Gary. So thank you, Jerry, for your condolences. And, so thank you for Steve and David and Jerry for your comments here. So I I had stacked up a few questions here. So I have, let me just work with Gary for this. I know the question that was put in by Dennis, he's not on the line, so we can wait on that. And let's see if anyone else has any ArchiCAD questions that you'd like to pass along to me. Just type them into the chat or to the questions area. So let us see, Gary, your line is still open. So let's talk about complex profiles. Now, in this sample project, one of the reasons I have it open is because I do have a lot of different things set up to demonstrate how ArchiCAD works. It makes it very easy for me to just open up things because I have a lot of different things built in there, and it is a great way to understand how ArchiCAD functions by even just looking at this sample project. Even though it's a very small little project, many of you have seen this many times before, just a little bungalow, a California house designed just for training purposes by an architect that I worked with for quite a few years, named Scott Bulmer. All right, so complex profile. There are many different reasons you might use complex profiles. I'll show you one that demonstrates some of these things. So if I select this wall here, you'll see that this wall, the highlights have a base here and then an extension. And if I go and say, edit the selected complex profile, we'll see that it's a standard wall with insulated structural space with a base that represents a cut a plate and with a double top plate here. It is set up so that some things can be stretched. So you can see where it says base depth here. So what is this? This is allowing me, because it's set up with offset modifiers, to stretch the cladding down or potentially up, but usually down to cover the rim joist here. It also has a separate modifier for the interior drywall, so it allows me to pull that up above the baseboard or something else as needed. And up above, we also have a similar thing. We have something that would allow you to pull the gypsum down to, if you have the ceiling coming across on top of that, and the top can be pulled. So these are all what are called offset modifiers, and you'll see them listed here by name. Now, in this view, I put the sort of neutral position. In other words, it starts with everything even here, but I can change it on the fly. So let's take a section and look in the section to see how that works. So go and I'll just pick a section on the plan so we can sort of see it in that context here. So we have a section, actually let's do this section here. So I'll open up this section. I'll go to the views from this section, all related views. This will allow me to pick up my choice of which view. There's a version that's set up for schematic use, one for sketch, and here is a construction document one. All right, let's say open that. So here we have a view, and I think the this is the area we were just looking at, and here's the wall. And you can see the cladding has been pulled down here. So first I'm going to just demonstrate how it functions, then I'll show you how it's set up. So Gary, want to open up your line so I can, chat back and forth with you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So if I have this open in a section, you can see that this has a blue line. This is a blue line here. So this is the line in line with the reference line of the of this wall. So that's set up carefully to match, the framing. So we're putting it right on top of, the foundation wall here. But this blue line indicates that I can go and select this and change the offset modifier and specify a height. So if I wanted to pull it up to here, you can see I can type in using in the tracker, or I can just snap it to something, and you'll see how that has moved. It did not move anything else. It just moved that. And that this wall, if I open up the settings of the wall, we'll see that there is a section called Profile Offset Modifiers. And remember, I changed the base depth. It said 11.5. If I undo that and it goes back down, it's going to be probably 1'1" here. By the way, you should also be able to see this over here. Here's the 1'1". Okay, so you can do it in the dialog box or in the info box there. Whoops. Okay, so how is this created here? So let me just demonstrate by creating a brand new, just complex profile. All right, so let me, in order to do that, I'm going to go to a different wall. Let's see, I think this wall, no, that's also there, but if we have a wall that is not a complex profile, this wall is not a complex profile. Okay, how do I know that? Because this little symbol means that it's a composite, whereas this one is a complex profile. You can see the difference. So let me just take this one, and what I'll do is I'm going to actually capture this profile. So what does capture a profile mean? It means that I can take something that I drew with just a composite and actually start with that to build up a complex, section view of it. So if I right click on that, I'm not sure if we can do it here. We can edit it here, but I think if we go to the options, complex profiles, it does not allow me to capture the profile here. Let me go to the second floor and just see if I can I go up here, and
I use the section view.
I was in a section view just there.
Through that wall.
Here you can see I'm selecting one of the similar walls, and here is the option to capture profile of selection. It did not appear when I had it selected. Oh, you were saying that I was looking at it in elevation. I wasn't looking at it I wasn't cutting through it. So possibly we'd have that there. Anyway, I'll just capture the profile. What it's going to do is it's going to create a new custom profile that initially is exactly the same as the composite. So we can see the different skins for the framing, cladding, and facade, and the interior, okay? And so each one of these is just a fill that represents a building material, or is associated with the building material. And there are nothing down in this area that would be the modifiers. So I'm not going to get into creating the framing piece here. I'm just going to say, how would you make this stretchable? Well, what I do is I say I want to add a new modifier. So, well, you have to save this first. I can't work with a custom one. We'll say save it, but I'll give this, let's call it test profile 1 here. It will now exist with a name, and now I can go and add in a profile modifier. Now I could just call this bottom outside facade. I could give it any name I want, but I could say, yeah, actually, let's look at what we already have, because I really want, I want to be able to control this along with other similar walls using the same controls. So this might be base depth. I think it's, I think that's what I called it, as opposed to, yeah, because it was gypsum offset in the base, and this would be base depth. So I'll say, hey, I'm going to create a definition of an offset using the same name. So that way, if I say all of these walls have an offset of 1'1", they'll all do something based on that. So I'll say base depth. Now, it has a little warning sign saying you haven't defined it yet. If I click on it, I don't know if it just says there's a warning here. What I need to do is click on this plus, And then it says select fill edge or node to start offset dimension input. So these are all fills. It says I need to select an edge or a node. I'm going to select this edge here. I'll just zoom in on it. See how the blue line appears? So I clicked on it. And then it says select fill edge node or create static point for offset dimension. I'm going to click on a static point, this point here, to say I'd like to control it based on how far this is from that point. And then it says define position of offset dimension. So right now I'm just going to move over here. So what does that do? It says initially this is going to be set to 0 inches from there. And you can see the little tiny arrow, it's pointing down, meaning that a positive number will move it down and a negative number will move it up. So I could work with that. In fact, let's just apply it here. Whoops. Apply it. I think what it did was it would have selected this wall, I think. This wall is now that complex profile. It's now that test profile. I didn't actually mean to do that. I just meant to save it. But what this means is that this wall, let me just drag a copy of it over to the side here. So this wall is using that profile here. And if I were to look in 3D with just that wall, we'll see that when I select it, there's now this little edge, and I can go and use that offset modifier and say, you know, I want to move it down. Okay. Now, right now it's showing the edge with an override. I think it's setting up where is it? This is saying that the exposed edges are overridden and it's just, you know, using the stucco on the outside. Let me turn that off. And you can see now this is the exposed edge is just the natural side. So I've done that. That was, you know, of course, a very simple thing, but it's only affecting one. And very often you want to have two things coordinated, like this moving down with it. You don't have this just floating in space, right? So I'm going to go back and edit this. And you can see this is highlighted here. Well, I can go in with it highlighted, click to say I'd like to add something else to this. Then it says click the same thing, select the fill edge. I'll go to this edge. And then it says which is the direction. So when I move this so that it coordinates, then both of these will move together. If I had it the other way, then they'd move in opposite directions, which wouldn't be at all appropriate here, but would be if you were making something thicker or thinner around a center point. So that's a key thing. So I'm just going to click, and now these two are highlighted. I'll just save them. Okay, save this. And if I go back to that 3D view, you'll see now the offset, which I just did by eye, but could be numerically put in, is going to affect both of them at the same time, right? So you can actually have multiple things that move up or down at the same time. Now, if we wanted to have things that expand or contract in opposite directions, it isn't going to be too directly relevant here, but let's just go back and demonstrate that. I could select what would it be? I could say I want to create a new one, and we'll call this core here. And I'll define this as this face and its distance from the midpoint. You can see here's the midpoint there. Actually, enter position of the offset. Actually, is that going to work? No, I don't think so. Let's see. Let me get rid of. Let me just kill that core there. I think if I put in a hotspot here, it'll work. So here is the. It's interesting. Why is this? The snap points. There's a half. Yeah, it should be half there. Oh, I guess one is half along the whole thing and one is half along here. So let me, which one is it? Or neither one? This looks like the halfway. I'm pretty sure that's halfway between that. All right, let's just assume that. So I'm going to go in and say add this and call it the core here and say that it's going to take this edge measured from that point and no, that's not going to work there. That's not, let's see. So let me draw a line. Can I do a line here? Just a line in space. I've not done this. I'm trying to do this out of context, but let's just see if I say add it as this edge measured to this point. Okay, that's now at least, 1 3/4 is obviously half of 3.5 inches there. Well, if I wanted to make this a thicker dimension, I could say that that this core, I want to add to it this edge relative to that point. And now what happens if I were to make this thicker? What it would do is it would say, we're going to move everything out away from here. I'm not sure whether how it'll work in this context, but I just want to demonstrate that you can have two things that would go opposite directions here. So let's just say save this. And if I were to go to that 3D view and select it, you can see the blue lines here. If I were to pull this offset, you can see how it's moving in opposite directions. So right now the offset is 1 3/4. Let me make it, we're going to add another 2 inches to make it a 5.5 inch thing. So I'll say the offset will be 2 3/4. Now, did not work very well for this because I'm making this wider and this, other things didn't move. And so it actually won't work very well in this context because of the limitations of it. But if you think about something that would be like a pipe or something that is just a stem wall that's just concrete, you can potentially have things get wider or narrower by creating two opposing sides that go in opposite directions. So this context doesn't work, but that would be, the other way that it works. So let's see, then Gary, comments, questions?
Not really. I think just figuring out that it has to go from a point there. Like that. Because sometimes I've made a complex profile and then putting in those modifiers, and then instead of having like a circle on one end, I have two arrows. Does that make sense?
Well, let's see if we go in here. So when we're creating this, so let's just get rid of this core one because it obviously is not functional. So when we're creating one of these, I'll just test here. So if I say take this edge and another edge here, okay, so that's another possibility. This would then would allow these two faces to be pulled apart from each other. The other one was to a node point. So when you have a Mercedes, ArchiCAD is paying attention to a surface. When you have a check mark, ArchiCAD is paying attention to a node point. When I did the earlier ones, I was saying measure it from this node point, and these would go up or down from this point, not from another edge here. So I found that for this type of common situation with walls, that doing it from a node point, in the other, in the actual ones that I'm using for the walls in that sample project, I have a framing, and I'm measuring it from the top of the framing as a corner point, and then it's saying, hey, it's going down to cover that. That's 1.5 inches. and or further, but it's measuring from that point. Anyway, but you'll get 2 arrows if you go 2 edges. You'll get a single arrow if you if you're going from a node point.
Okay.
Now, if I wanted to make this thicker, let's just see what happens with this. I'm not sure if I say save this and let's go back to that 3D view. Okay, so if I go back to the 3D view here, if we select this, now if I were to pull this offset modifier, so that is working.
And it's just,
It's just 2 surfaces, and of course it's the 2 outer surfaces. It's not very useful, but you can see the potential thing. If you had a pipe and you were changing the thickness of, the actual pipe component separately from its diameter, right? That could potentially be useful. All right, so there's that. I wanted to, what was it? If we wanted to change the thickness of this, that actually is done in a different way. They're correctly, like I was doing it incorrectly as part of demonstration. But if I go to edit here, how would we change the thickness of this? Well, we have what's called width stretch and height stretch. Okay, so in terms of the height, it's clear, this wall started out at, whatever nominal height, 16 feet. Oh, interesting. So that one was a tall wall that was cut off by the top of a roof. So it had some initial height value. Now this horizontal line and that one relate to the height stretch, and these 2 up here relate to the width stretch. Now let's just take a look. This width stretch, you can see it's actually set up around the core, because it was smart enough to say this fill, which represents framing, is the core. If I open this up, doesn't say this, but it inherited it. Obviously, that was the core, and it's smart enough to say, hey, you might want to change the thickness of this core. So with the width stretch enabled, let's just look at the 3D view, and with this selected here, I can go into, let's see, what we can do here is I can say, instead of it being 5.5 total, this would be the 3.5 plus, these other pieces. Let's just add another couple of inches, 7.5. Now, that's not working very well, is it? The core did change here, but remember, I put in that. Let me undo that. I think it's because I put in these other things here. So let me go in and edit that and remove them, because if I say remove the test one here, so now the outside ones aren't being sort of arbitrarily controlled here, and we go back to 3D. Now you'll see the blue lines disappear. We only have this one. So now if we go in and say, let's make it thicker, now you can see that it's smart enough to say, oh, I'll leave the blue line constant. This is how it's going to get thicker, and this will just ride along with it. And so I could make it 9.25 or something here, and you can see how it's intelligently doing it. It's not deforming that. It's still keeping that at 1/2 inch or whatever that was there. So that's how you would do it. You wouldn't try to control the outside using something that was matching the 2 sides together. You would potentially want to say, hey, I want to make the outside. So actually, let's just do the outside separately as one last test here. So I'll go and say I want to add in facade thickness here. and we'll say it's going to be this edge, and we're going to measure it from this point. There at 7/8, and we'll say, I'm not quite sure whether we should do the point or the face or from here, but I'll just do it here because 7/8, obviously this is a critical dimension or a useful dimension. So let me just save that. And now if we go to the 3D, we're going to see that this now has a blue line here. I can literally just thicken that, and I can type in a value in terms of the offset modifiers. The facade thickness, I can say it's going to be 1 1/2 inch or something like that, and that controls it. The original one was 7/8 there. Okay, so you can do that, but obviously you wouldn't want to match one side and the other. That was just a demonstration. So is that relatively clear?
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So I see Tataranu has a question. In the Profile Manager menu with the hatch selected, you define the core or finish down at the bottom. Thank you, Tataranu. So in the Profile Manager menu with the hatch selected, so we're going to go back to the test profile here with this selected under options, complex profiles. No, I don't see it there. So, core. Oh, here's core. Okay, here's core versus, if I click on this one, this is finish. Okay, that's where it's selected. I'd forgotten about that. So thank you, Tataranu, for pointing that out. Under components that you have selected, you can see how it switches to represent that. And it picked it up because remember, I captured this from a composite, and that composite has skins, and you have the option, and you should define this skin as core. These skins are either finish or other. So, all right. So I have one question that I said I kept putting off, and I'll now attempt to take a look at it here. So that was getting a label to indicate the elevation of part of a slab. So let me just look here here. So we have a slab here. Okay. If I just so for fun, I'll just say show only the slab in 3D here. And we see, okay, so this particular slab is not set up as a composite. It's just a simple one is what it appears. So let me go down to the lower story, and because I'm pretty sure that one has a composite. Let's see. So this is, yeah, it is a composite here. Let's just take a look at it in 3D. There we go. Okay, and the other one might have been, might have actually had skins, but I just had the edge being overridden. But this clearly has, you know, a finished floor on top of a structural space, and it's got some framing that is currently showing as a void here. So if we wanted to dimension on the plan or in a 3D annotated view, the top elevation or the elevation of the structural floor or the base, what options do we have? Well, let me go to the first floor plan and say, I can dimension this and, or I can put in a label, and that label can refer to it. How would we do that? I go to the label tool, make sure it's set to associate, go click on this element, and I can draw, you know, a little arrow to indicate that I'm pointing here, but I can also remove this and just have it end up being purely just text. Now, when I do this, it's prepared to show me information about the element I'm associating it with. In this case, we have a slab, and I can say, what is the elevation of the top? Or what is the elevation of the bottom? Now, do we have one that says elevation of the top of the structure? I don't see it, so probably we don't have that option there, but let's just say elevation of the top. Here's 0, okay. Nothing too fancy there. Let me just say that I'm going to put one in here, And this one I'm going to say is not going to have a line here. And then I'll say that it's going to be bottom. So I'm putting in some words, and then I'm saying this is going to pick up the elevation of the bottom. Okay, minus 10 inches. All right. So the difference is this one does not have a pointer. You can see how you can turn this on or off with this little checkbox. I do have some text that I manually just typed in just to clarify what this is saying. And it is picking up information that is related to the, what do you call it, that composite. But it appears that this, if I select it, I can pick up elevation of the bottom or top, but I do not have something that would be the reference height. Now, let's just check before giving totally up. I want to select this slab and say, where is the reference? It says, oh, the reference is at the top. Well, what if we were to change it to be the core top? Okay. Notice that that actually changed this because it says that I have the 0 reference now being the core top, and the bottom is a little, raised up a little bit. Now that I've defined it as the core top, will this actually give me any options here? So if I go in here, and I'll just be arbitrary, I'll just say top of finish of structural floor. Will it give me that? I'm guessing no, but let's just see. Sometimes things change when you change the setting. Reference plane location. Okay, that's interesting. We just changed the reference plane, but I don't think that's going to be the actual elevation of it. But I'll just select it as core top. Okay, not, it's interesting, but it's not really what we're asking about. I don't see anything that has that. Now, if we just type in the word top, there may be some other top elevation to first reference. Okay, so what is the top elevation? This might refer to the reference plane, and that's what I want to see. If we say top elevation to project 0, 0.75. So that is the actual top of the finished floor, clear, not the top of the structural floor. So this is the top of the actual full thickness. Do we have, no, do we have, there's a reference plane. So let's just see reference, top elevation to first reference level. Okay, these are referring to points in your model that you might say, hey, the grade outside the front door, that's a reference level, or street elevation is a reference level, but it's not having to do with references within the plane. And just so I'm clear, this is the reference plane location. So I was trying to type in reference, it was not picking that up as a thing. So my guess is, I could look a little further, but I don't think this is going to work. And so I will have to say, going back to his question here, whoops, not here, identify the elevation of a core component here. So I don't see it. Now, that being said, it is possible to create a parameter that is calculated based on some aspect, some additional calculations from the elements. So what I mean by that is you can in schedules list information that is native to an element, and you can do some calculations using what's called formulas with a limited set of information from the element. In other words, it could pick up the perimeter, or it could pick up the length and the depth and multiply it and create an area or things like that. But I don't think there would be a way in ArchiCAD's current formula environment to say, hey, add up, take the top elevation, which we know we can get, and add up the thickness of the cladding, things that are not core. And as soon as you hit the core, stop adding. So we know that the what is it, the sheathing and finish floor total 1.5 inches or something like that, and deduct that and calculate that and give me that number. I just don't think that you can get that from a composite. I may be wrong, but I can't quite visualize it. So I'd have to say I don't have an answer to that, and my guess is it's not going to be possible, which is too bad. So you can obviously manually put in an annotation, and in a section you can snap to it and just say what height that is. But on the plan, I don't think you could automatically do that. One other workaround would be to break up the floor into 2 components, one being your structural floor and maybe an underside of ceiling or something like that, and the other being the finished floor, and then you could annotate the structural floor separately. So if you didn't use a composite, then you could get that information. So that would be the workaround I would have. All right. So Tataranu, let me open up your line because you have a couple other comments here in the last few minutes. Tataranu.
Hello, hello.
Hey, where are you located, Tataranu?
In Romania.
In where?
Romania.
Romania. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. So can we make a label to show the note remark for a window from the properties of the window? Okay, let's take a look at that. And then you had another question. In the elevation label in ArchiCAD 27, you have auto text for core top and bottom.
Yeah.
All right, so they've added that, built it in. So that's good to know. So can we make a label to show the note / remark for a window from the properties of the window? Okay, so let's just see where the note / remark lives here. Okay, so if I select a window and I open up this window here.
Yeah, go at the description, I think it's called.
Okay,
in the last one, yeah.
We have note remarks. Okay, so let's just say a test for Ron. How do you spell? I got it, I think. All right, so I've just put in a note there. That could be put into a schedule because the schedules can pull in additional parameters from library parts. And I'll demonstrate that here. Let's just take a look at a schedule because I don't think we can do it from a label.
From the label, I don't think it works. Yeah.
I'm just going to show what I know it can do, and then I think, so what do we have if I go to our schedules here? So I go to schedules, and here's a window schedule, and that was WN03 here, and here is the test for Tatarano, which came in because this column is in the scheme. It's picking up note remarks. Now this is picking it up. If I go to add fields, it's not picking it up from this area of general parameters. It's picking it up from the library part parameters. So the schedule can pick up either one, but the labels can only pick up these. Now, if you decided to put in note remarks in using properties, then you could do that. So that's what probably be the easiest workaround, is not to use the library part parameters where it says, hey, when I want to do a library part parameter, first of all, I have to say what are used objects here. That's going to be the simplest thing. And I'll say in the library here, I've got let's see, openings, windows, and pick any library part that's available here. And then when I have this selected, I can go find, and I don't think you can do a search, but there would be the note remarks is somewhere. Actually, if I sort by type, it'll be under the text ones, which are down near the end, and we have GS, and it would probably be, well, I don't know where it would say note remarks, but well, we can see note remarks, GS list note here. So it's GS list note is already in there. So that's where that particular one is. It's in the library part, and all of the windows in the standard library would have that. So it works. But if you wanted to have this as an annotation, then what you would do is you would go under the options property manager. And let's just see if we have a note here. All right, so in master template, I've set up a couple of extra properties that have the word note, and you could use drawing note, you know, like for, this is a note that we put on drawings about the window. Okay, so let's just say, we'll use that. So master template has, you know, a limited number, but certainly a batch of useful properties as examples and for real world use. All right, so let's say that we're going to use that. So I haven't made any changes, but let's go to the scheme settings and say, instead of using the library part parameter, I'm going to add a field, and I'll say that it's actually not, add a field, and I'll say note, and it says, oh, you want to add the drawing note from the properties? Okay, so now that exists here, and we'll see that it's off to the side. I can change this to say, you know, just note or notes. I can edit that. It'll have the same thing. I can make this wider, of course, so that it, I think I can move these around, change them. But now let me just copy this text here, and I'll put it in here. Now I can actually edit this right in this view here. And let's see, there was another window, WN02. That's for a new window in that area. And I'll just say another test. Okay, so here's some notes that we can put in the schedule or in the library part. Now, where do we see this? If we go back to the plan, so this is WN02. If I open this up and I say, where do I see this? Well, it's down under classification and properties. And in that area, we can see here's another test. That's what I just typed in, right? Now this, or the similar one for your test here, can be put into an annotation. So what do? I go to the label tool here. I hover over this, click on it. What's going on here? I have a label. It's going to be there. I'm going to say it's going from, oh, you know what? I have it right now. I've turned off the pointer line. Let me just do it as a pointer line here just to start out. And what am I going to get? I'm going to go search in here for the word note, and there's the drawing note. If I double click on that, and there's another test. And if I drop this and I place one here, okay. So these show up in the schedule just like the other type of note, and they can be used for annotation.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be usable?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who are less familiar with properties, you can go into the options, property manager. You can create a new property, give it new notes here. You can say that it's going to be part of any group here. These are just groupings here. And I say just, okay, I'll leave it in the AMT, and you'll see it now exists. And by default, it'll be a string, which is a string of characters, a sequence of characters, or just basically text. You could also say that a property is a number, or it's an integer, or it's a length, etc. But string would be the default. So this is now available and could be used in schedules and can be used in labels just by doing that. Now that exists in this file that I'm working on. And when I save that file, it'll just endure. If I want it to be in another file, I can just manually add it, or I can export one or more of these properties to a separate little file. And then in another file or my template, I can import those property definitions. And what are they? They're the name, what group they're in, like AMT or general ratings or main construction, as you're seeing on the screen. And there is a definition. Is it a string? Is it a length, etc.? And there can be formulas. And by the way, here's just I'm not going to go into this, but here's calculated area. It's going to say that the area of something is based on the surface area. If it's a wall, or it's if it's a beam, it's going to be the area of the bottom, or if it's a polygon element, it's going to be one area. So this is a series of rules saying this calculated area can be derived from different types of elements. They'll all have the word area, even though they're created separately. If we do a calculated cost, this is a rather complicated looking thing, but it says if the unit is each, then it multiplies the cost factor by how many of them. If we open this, edit this, yeah, it's very complicated, but it's basically saying if we're saying that each chair is $185, then you can figure out the cost of the 10 chairs by multiplying 10 times 185. On the other hand, if the cost is based on the length, so much per linear foot or by area or by volume, then we're going to multiply by that. So it's smart enough to say, so this is built into master template as a way of saying we can do some preliminary costing based on putting in a cost factor and tell it what it's based on. Is it based on volume, area, length, or how many of the elements there are? So that's an example of formulas. And this one is an example of just put in a little place to locate some text. So
one more thing, for the new node to work, you have to make it available for all classifications.
yes, you're right. So I forgot about that. Thank you for pointing that out. So the new notes here is not going to be seen when I put in a wall or a window or whatever, unless I say it's available for all classifications. That would mean, anything that ArchiCAD has, and you can see it's a very long list of different types of things. Or I can say it's custom, and I can say that the new notes are only going to be on, say, window, here, only on windows, here, and maybe I want to say also on doors. So just if I wanted to do that, then I could say that it's only going to be seen on windows and doors. So this is basically, you define it here, and then you either say just make it available for anything and everything, or it's only relevant to this category of element. So good point, Tatrana. All right, so anything else from any of you? You can type in. We've obviously gone a little over 2 hours, which was amazing because I had almost no questions submitted. But I think we had a good time. At least I have enjoyed sharing my insights and giving you some new ideas or understandings. So okay. Off says, great webinar, I have to leave. Okay, see you in the future webinars. Chandeni says, couldn't find the chat. I'm sorry to hear of your loss. Thank you. Greetings from the Netherlands. Okay, Utrecht. Okay, all right. Well, thank you all for joining me today. And next month it'll be interesting because hopefully I'll be able to talk about ArchiCAD 27. And I'm glad, was it Tatarano, you've obviously had some experience with working with it, and or at least you've looked into what Graphisoft has put out. Any other surprises there that you think are interesting?
The elevation is also available in 26, not 27. It was my mistake for the core and bottom, by the way.
Well, I'm in 26 here, and I didn't see.
Put an elevation label on this slab.
Okay, you say an elevation label. All right, let me see. So we have, you're talking about level dimension tool. So
Yeah.
If I hover over it, it's saying this is the slab, and we have this.
Now click on the text.
Here, this is single value or multi-line.
Multi-line. Yeah, and here you have auto text for bottom and core.
Well, there you go. I had forgotten about that. So it's not using the label tool. It's using the level dimension tool, and you can say the slab roof core top to project 0 would be what we'd want here. And this right now, if I say here, top of structure is this, and then this one, I don't know, this would be top of finish here. So you can see this is what it's going to put in here. So there we have that. So that is a level dimension that can go on the plan. And I think if we go back to that question, there, that may be, what am I looking at? Here, auto label, can auto text in a custom label. So he gave me a 3D view here. I guess it's this main floor. Oh, well, actually, this is in a, well, I don't know that. I guess if what we're seeing is just a piece of rectangle piece and he overlaid that. So yeah, probably would.
It should work.
Yeah, there's a way to put in auto text into a label. So it's not a label, it would be a level dimension. And in 26, level dimensions can have more sophistication, can have multiple lines. It functions much like a label, but with a special bullseye marker, and it understands some things about the structure of the slabs. So there you go. So thank you for reminding me about that. And you know, that's why I love these things, because I always learn a little bit every time. So thanks everybody. So look forward to seeing you perhaps the next time. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.